Exact value using sum and difference. 5 pi over 12 is 75 degrees. I picked two angles to add, and then I did the cosine adding formula over here. I plugged in my alpha and beta. Now I'm going to unit circle. 45 degrees is radical 2 over 2, radical 3 over 2, minus radical 2 over 2 times 1/2. When we multiply straight across. So what's my denominator going to be? 4. Can I take radical 2 times radical 3? Radical 6. How many negative signs do I have in the second part? 1. Minus radical 2 over 4. Radical 6 minus radical 2 all over 4. My answer is C. Questions on the first one? Be easy to do. It says find the exact value, so know eventually you're going to use your unit circle. Sum and difference identities, so you know you're using these. The first step that we wrote out on Wednesday was match the pattern. Cosine, cosine, minus sine, sine. Which sum and difference identity goes cosine, cosine, minus sine, sine? Cosine A plus B. Whatever number comes first is your A. Whatever number comes second is your B. 80 plus 100 is cosine of 180. Then I'm doing it. I'm going to 180 degrees. 180 degrees is right here. I'm doing cosine, which is x. My answer was B, -1. Tangent is y over x, so my y is 3 and my x is 4. If I know those two things, what's my r going to be? R is 5, Pythagorean theorem. Don't forget about this second part. It says alpha is between pi and 3 pi over 2. So go on your unit circle, put your finger on pi, put your finger on 3 pi over 2. Show me with your finger which quadrant are you in if you're between pi and 3 pi over 2. Which quadrant is that? That is 3. Pi is right there. 3 pi over 2 is right there. If you're in the third quadrant, what's going to be negative? Both of them. Does that make sense here that both of them are negative if tangent was positive? If both of them were negative, it would look like it's positive. It's not really positive. It's positive. They're just both happen to be negative. Second one says sine of beta is -2/3. Sine means y over r. So my y is -2. My r is 3. I don't know my x. It's not one of my special right triangles. It'd be nice if it was. If I can't find it, what do I have to do? X squared plus 2 squared equals 3 squared. Remember, if it's a negative, just do it positive because you're going to square it anyways. X squared plus 4 is 9. Minus 4 minus 4. X squared is 5. So x is going to be the square root of 5. Technically, it is a plus or minus square root of 5. To figure out which one it is, you're looking at this. Beta is between negative pi over 2 and 0. Show me with your fingers which quadrant are you in if you're between negative pi over 2 and 0. Here's 0. Where's negative pi over 2 going to be? Yeah, at the bottom, because regular pi over 2 is at the top, so if I do negative, it's down there. If I'm in the fourth quadrant, is that x supposed to be a positive number or a negative number? Positive. It's a positive radical 5. This was the hard part. Once you found your alpha and your beta, then you just have to do the last part, which is actually doing the sum and difference identity. Sine of alpha plus beta. I'm using that formula right there. It says sine alpha cosine beta plus cosine alpha sine beta. To do that, remember, to find sine alpha, it means look at the alpha triangle and do sine. Sine means y over r. So this is -3/5. Go ahead and continue to fill in there and see if you can solve it without me. Cosine of beta, b cosine x over r, so it's 5 radical 5 over 2. Plus cosine of alpha, looking at alpha, cosine is x over r again, so it's -4/5. Sine of beta, I'm looking at beta, it's sine, y over r, -2 all over radical 3. What? -2 over, what did I do wrong there? Everything, right? What was I doing? Who knows? Let's try again. Let's go again. I don't know what I just did, but I wrote stuff wrong. Cosine of beta, sorry. Beta, cosine. There we go. Radical 5 over 3. I don't know what I was doing. Sorry. Cosine of alpha. Alpha is x over r, negative 4/5. Sine of beta. Here, sine, y over r, negative 2 over 3. Now we're good. My fault. Everybody on the same page now? I can't read numbers. They're rough. Now we're multiplying, and we multiply fractions. How do we multiply fractions? Straight across, what's my denominator going to be? 15 on both of them. If you don't get the same number on both, you know you made a mistake. Negative 3 times radical 5. Negative 3 radical 5. Can't do a whole lot with that. And then negative, how many minus signs do I have there? 2, so it's going to stay positive there. It's going to stay positive. 4 times 2 is 8. Now I'm looking to put that thing together. Both denominators are 15. On top, I'm taking negative 3 radical 5 plus 8. What am I going to get when I add those two things together? You can't combine them. They're not like terms. So don't try to add them together. They're not describing the same thing. One is describing how many radical 5s you have. The other one is describing the number 8. So do not put those two things together. Well, it's just like saying 8 plus 3x, right? You wouldn't put those two things together. It's the same thing here, just with a radical. Well, I have. Tangent of 13 pi over 12. It's 195 because 180 is here. That would be 11 pi over 12. Right there would be 13 pi over 12, which is 195. So let's write that as 195 instead. I'm doing tangent of that. So the first step, just like before, was building that angle. You need two things to add or subtract to get you 195. 135 plus 60. Anybody else get another one? 150 plus 45. One of those is good. One of those are bad. Which of those two would we rather use here? Yeah, 135 and 60 is going to be better because 150 is right here, and it's got a radical 3 in it over 3. We don't want to use the fraction one, so we're going to use 135 and 60. It's tangent of 135 plus 60. Use your formulas right here. Plug into your formula and try to simplify a little bit. I'll give you about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to come back to you. But see what you can do without me for a second. Tangent of 135 plus 60, so we're picking formulas. Which tangent one are we doing? The plus one. So it's tangent of 135 plus tangent of 60. I'm using my sum and difference identities over 1 minus tangent of 135 times tangent of 60. Now I'm going to unit circle. 135, unit circle. Tangent is negative 1 plus tangent at 60, 60 degrees. Tangent is radical 3. On bottom, it's 1 minus tangent of 135, which we just said was negative 1, times tangent of 60, which we just said was radical 3. So what am I going to put on bottom? So it's going to be 1 what? Plus radical 3. That will be the number one mistake on the test. That right there. It was 1 minus, and I had a negative sign. Minus a negative really made it plus. 1 times radical 3 is radical 3. It's 1 plus 1 times radical 3. So we got to multiply first. 1 times radical 3 is radical 3, and then I've got the 1. You got to multiply before you add. Once we've done that, that's the majority of the, or that's 3 out of the 5 points. You got a 60% just getting to there. From there, to get the rest of your points, you got to get the radical out of the denominator. And to do that, you need to multiply by the conjugate. What do I need to multiply by here to multiply by the conjugate here? It's going to be 1 and radical 3. 1 minus radical 3. What's going to go on top? Same thing. Same thing on bottom, same thing on top. Go ahead and simplify from there. You got multiple choice answers when you get done. Hold them up as you finish. We're multiplying. We're foiling. 1 times 1 is 1. Negative radical 3. Positive radical 3. Minus 3. What's always going to happen on bottom? They always cancel, and I'm always going to get negative 2 on bottom. If you're not getting negative 2, you know you made a mistake. 1 minus 3. On top, I'm foiling negative 1 plus radical 3 plus radical 3 minus 3 on top. On top, every time it's pretty much the same thing. Negative 1 and negative 3 get me negative 4. I have 2 radical 3's, so it's plus 2 radical 3's. I'm reducing then. When I reduce, I take negative 4 divided by negative 2. What will that get me? 2, positive 2, so it's either A or C. And then I take that same thing, 2 radical 3 divided by negative 2. What's that going to get you? A negative radical 3, because the 2 and the negative 2 would cancel to get you just a negative radical 3. Yep. I'm going to always try to write stuff as sine and cosine. So that's always, my first step I always remember is FOIL or distribute. Is there any foiling or distributing here? No. So I'm going to rewrite everything in terms of sine and cosine. So cosecant is 1 over sine times sine squared. So I'm going to write sine squared times cotangent, which is cosine over sine. And I'm trying to figure out what that all is equal to. It's being multiplied. So if it's being multiplied, it's one giant fraction. What can I cancel? How many of them? All of them. You have 2 on top because it's squared. You have 2 on bottom. So those all cancel. All you have left? Cosine. Done. Questions on that one?